Okay, so today we're going deep on something pretty wild, alien abductions.
Yeah, a topic people have some pretty strong opinions about.
For sure, right. I mean,
That's
it's
true.
one of those things that's just out there.
Totally. And that's why we've got a whole mix of stuff for this deep dive.
Exactly. We've got like firsthand stories, people who say they've been abducted.
We've also got the skeptics, the people who are like, no way, this isn't real.
Right. And to add to that, we've got some historical stuff too.
Like, how did this whole UFO thing even start?
And get this, we've even got statistics thrown in there.
Yeah, some numbers that might actually surprise you.
So the mission here is to take all this stuff, we've gathered these different perspectives, and see what we can learn.
Exactly. We're not telling you what to believe.
Right, just laying it all out there.
Let's explore this whole alien abduction mystery.
Sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start at the beginning.
All right, let's define some terms.
Right, when we talk about alien abduction, what are we actually talking about?
Well, the sources we've got are pretty clear.
Okay, how so?
Aliens are extraterrestrial beings.
Okay, makes sense so far.
And abduction is when a human gets kidnapped by one of these aliens.
All right, so pretty straightforward definition.
But that's where the agreement ends.
Right, because then you've got people who absolutely believe it.
Exactly. And these believers, they tend to have some common ideas.
Okay, like what?
They believe these extraterrestrials are actually visiting Earth.
And not just visiting, right?
Right, they're interacting with us, taking people.
And there's this whole thing about physical exams too, right?
Yeah, often described as really invasive, especially focusing on reproductive systems.
Yeah, I've heard about that. And then there's the government conspiracy angle.
Oh yeah, big-time believers often say governments know about these aliens.
Maybe even working with them somehow.
Exactly, maybe even getting advanced tech in exchange for letting the abductions happen.
Wow, that's a whole other level.
It is, and some even point to increased UFO sightings as like a sign of the government's involvement.
Like they're allowing it to happen or something.
That's the idea anyway.
Wow, and then on the other side, you've got the skeptics.
Oh yeah, the complete opposite view.
So they're saying there's zero proof of any of this.
They say there's no credible evidence for aliens at all.
Let alone abductions.
Exactly. They tend to explain these abduction stories through psychology.
Like maybe these people have mental health issues.
That's one explanation, or maybe it's just really vivid dreams.
Or even hallucinations.
Right, there's this quote from the Skeptics Dictionary.
Okay, what does it say?
It says, belief in UFOs and aliens basically comes down to speculation, fantasy fraud, or just weak evidence.
So they're basically shutting down the whole thing.
Pretty much, it's a complete rejection of everything the believers are saying.
It's fascinating though, isn't it? You've got these two completely different ways of looking at the same thing.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is when you look at the hard evidence, it's not clear-cut.
What do you mean?
Well, the sources we've got, they keep using the word inconclusive.
Okay, about what?
About the evidence itself, and also about the probability of alien abduction being a real paranormal event.
So basically, we don't know for sure.
We don't, and that's the problem with this whole topic.
Right, we've got all these stories, these beliefs.
But no real proof.
So I guess the question is, what do we do with all these stories then?
That's a good question. And one thing that's interesting is the common threads in these abduction accounts.
Right, like what are the things people consistently report?
Well, almost everyone says they saw a UFO.
Okay, that's pretty standard, I guess.
And they often talk about being taken from somewhere.
Like their bed or their car.
Exactly. And often they feel completely paralyzed.
Like they can't move.
Right. And then they describe floating.
Floating? Like how?
Out of the room or the car.
Wow, and then they see the aliens.
Yeah, and it's interesting, our source mentions Greys and Nordics specifically.
Like those are the most common types of aliens people report seeing.
Right, and later on, our source even compares them to figures in folklore.
That's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is, and the similarities don't stop there.
Oh, really? What else do people say?
Well, a lot of people talk about being taken inside a spacecraft.
Like actually inside?
Yeah, and then they end up on a table.
And then what?
That's where the physical exams happen.
Using weird alien tools and stuff?
That's what they say, and a lot of them talk about having bodily fluids taken.
That's scary stuff.
It is, and some even say they had small implants put in them.
Implants? Like tracking devices or something?
Maybe, or who knows what else.
And after all this, some people end up with scars.
Yeah, or marks they can't explain.
And some women even say they've had pregnancy suddenly end.
Yeah, and there's no medical explanation for it.
That's just bizarre.
And then there's the lost time phenomenon.
What's that?
It's where people have big chunks of time they can't account for.
Like hours or even days just gone.
That's right. It's like they just disappeared from their own lives for a while.
And they have no memory of what happened.
None. It's like a blank spot.
So all of this is pretty consistent across different abduction stories.
It is, and it's definitely one of the things believers point to.
As evidence that it's real.
Exactly, but of course skeptics have their own take on that.
What do they say?
Well, they might argue that these similarities just come from shared narratives.
Like maybe people are reading the same UFO books and websites.
Right, or watching the same movies and TV shows.
So they're influenced by what they're consuming.
Exactly, and then you have the power of suggestion, especially with hypnosis.
So maybe the way questions are asked during hypnosis is leading people to remember things a certain way.
It's possible, but there's another skeptical argument that our sources actually challenge.
What's that?
It's the idea that people are making up these abduction stories for attention.
Oh, right. Like they're just trying to get famous or rich.
Exactly, but the sources we've got actually suggest the opposite.
Really? How so?
Well, a lot of people who claim to have been abducted actually avoid publicity.
They don't want to talk about it.
Not really. They often feel embarrassed or even ashamed.
That's interesting. Why would they feel that way if they were making it up?
Right, and think about it. If they wanted fame and money, wouldn't they be shouting their story from the rooftops?
I guess so. It's not very logical.
Exactly. So the fact that many abductees stay quiet suggests there might be something more to it.
Like maybe they really did experience something traumatic.
That's one interpretation.
So where does Dr. John Mack fit into all of this?
Dr. Mack, he's a fascinating figure in this whole debate.
Because he was a Harvard professor.
Right.
And a psychiatrist.
That's right, and a Pulitzer Prize winner, too.
So he was a serious academic.
No doubt. And he actually believed in alien abductions.
Seriously. A Harvard professor believing in alien abduction.
He did, and in his 1994 book, Abduction, he detailed the cases of 13 people he thought had been abducted.
That's pretty wild. He must have had some compelling reasons to believe them.
He did. Our source says he found their stories really powerful.
Like emotionally powerful.
Yeah, and really specific, too.
So specific that he couldn't dismiss them as just fantasies.
Exactly. He was persuaded.
But didn't other academics criticize him for this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The skeptical community wasn't happy.
They probably thought he was ruining his reputation.
Probably. But Dr. Mack, he had his own view on the whole thing.
What did he think was going on?
He thought it might be connected to some kind of evolution of consciousness.
Wow, that's a pretty big idea.
It is. He admitted he didn't fully understand these aliens or their intentions.
Right, he believed they were real.
He thought they represented a type of intelligence way beyond what we understand.
Like a higher level of being or something.
Exactly, and he said the experiences these abductees reported, they felt real to them.
And they were having real psychological effects because of it.
Right. He didn't shy away from that, but he was careful about how he defined real.
So he was open to different interpretations.
Yeah, which obviously pushed the boundaries of conventional science.
I can see why the skeptics weren't happy.
They definitely weren't. They compared modern alien encounters to old folklore.
Like saying, we don't believe in elves and fairies anymore, so why should we believe in Greys and Nordics?
Exactly. That was their argument.
It makes sense in a way, but to really understand how this whole alien abduction thing has evolved, we need some historical context.
I agree. And our source points to Professor Greg Agigian's book, After the Flying Saucers Came for that.
Okay, so what does he say?
He says that the way we react to UFO reports and abduction stories, it reflects how we try to make sense of things we don't understand.
Like we project our own fears and ideas onto these mysteries.
Exactly. So it's not just about what individuals are experiencing.
It's about a bigger societal response.
That's right. It's a collective thing.
And he connects the whole UFO thing to the post-World War II era. Right?
Yeah, that's a key period he points to.
Because that's when you had all this new technology emerging.
Right? Things like jet planes, rockets, ICBMs.
And the nuclear age was beginning.
It was a time of huge change and a lot of anxiety.
And the possibility of space travel became real.
Exactly. So all of this was happening at the same time these UFO stories started popping up.
It makes you wonder if those things are connected.
And don't forget about the Cold War.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge factor, too.
Right. Everyone was afraid of secret weapons and advanced tech.
So maybe people saw strange things in the sky and thought it was the enemy?
Could be. And Agigian points to 1947 as a turning point.
Why 1947?
That's when you had the first widely reported flying saucer sighting.
The one everyone knows about.
Exactly. And he says, since then, there's been this pattern.
What kind of pattern?
Periods of lots of UFO sightings and stories.
Followed by a decline in interest.
And then it all ramps up again.
Like a cycle.
Exactly. And it's still happening today.
Wow. It's amazing how long this has been going on.
It is. And to add another layer to this, we've got some actual numbers to look at.
Numbers. Okay.
I'm intrigued. Our source analyzed data from the National UFO Reporting Center.
Covering a pretty long period, too, right?
Yeah, from 1974 to 2025.
That's a lot of data.
It is, and they found over 182,000 reported UFO sightings in the U.S. alone.
Wow, over 182,000. That's a huge number.
It is, and get this, they even tried to calculate a probability of abduction based on that.
Wait, you can calculate that?
Well, they gave it a shot. They came up with about 1 in 1,833.
So like a 0.05% chance.
Something like that.
I mean, it's still a pretty small chance.
It is, but the source compares it to other things to give you some perspective.
Okay,
Like getting struck by lightning.
how does that compare?
Apparently, you're more likely to be abducted than struck by lightning.
Seriously?
That's what they say.
Wow, and what about shark attacks?
Even less likely, way less likely.
So statistically speaking, it's more likely you'll report a UFO sighting that leads to an abduction claim than get attacked by a shark.
That's what the analysis suggests.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is, but of course you have to take these statistics with a grain of salt.
Right, because they're based on what people report.
Exactly. We don't know for sure if all those sightings are accurate.
But it's still interesting data.
Oh, definitely. And the state-by-state breakdown in the U.S. is fascinating, too.
What do you mean?
Well, they list the top 10 states with the most UFO sightings.
And presumably the highest probability of abduction based on their calculations.
Right, and California is number 1.
Really, California?
Yeah, followed by Washington, Florida, Oregon, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Colorado, and Nevada.
And Area 51 is way down the list.
Yeah, only in 10th place.
That's kind of surprising.
It is, and they also looked at Canada.
What did they find there?
Fewer sightings overall.
But a higher probability per capita.
Apparently so.
Huh. Interesting.
And Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia lead the way there.
So it's not just an American thing.
Not at all. It seems like people all over are seeing things.
And this ties into the whole UAP thing too, right?
Yes, exactly. Unidentified anomalous phenomena.
The government's taking this stuff more seriously now.
They are, and the Age of Disclosure documentary talks about this.
There's that guy, Luis Elizondo.
Right. He was involved in the Pentagon's UFO program.
And he claimed there was a government disinformation campaign.
Yeah, like they were trying to cover things up.
But then you had Senator Gillibrand,
who offered a different explanation.
Right. She thought maybe these UAPs were just foreign technology.
Like from China or Russia?
So even within the government, there are different interpretations.
Absolutely.
To dive even deeper into this whole abduction thing, we should probably look at a specific case.
I agree. And there's one that really stands out.
Linda Napolitano.
Yes, the Manhattan alien abduction.
That case is wild.
It is. It happened in 1989.
And she claimed she was taken right out of her apartment.
From her window, no less.
In Manhattan.
Yeah, right in the middle of the city.
That's what makes it so crazy.
And she said they used some kind of tractor beam.
Like something out of a movie?
Totally. And get this, there were tons of witnesses.
Like people who saw it happen.
Supposedly 23 of them, including her family.
And they all said they saw her floating over the Brooklyn Bridge.
That's what they claimed.
I mean, that's a lot of people saying the same thing.
It is. And decades later, this case is still making headlines.
Because she's suing Netflix, right?
Yeah, over their documentary, The Manhattan Alien Abduction.
Which basically says she's lying.
Well, it's more complicated than that.
What do you mean?
The documentary focuses a lot on Carol Rainey.
Who's that?
She was married to Bud Hopkins.
The famous UFO researcher.
That's him. He was one of the first people to support Napolitano's story.
But his ex-wife didn't believe it.
Not at all. She became a big skeptic of his work.
Especially about the Manhattan case.
Exactly. And the documentary explores her reasons for that.
Yeah, okay. Like what?
Well, she was concerned about how Hopkins used hypnosis.
Like maybe he was leading people to say certain things.
That was her worry. She thought he might be influencing their memories.
And she even questioned his objectivity.
Yeah, she suggested he might have been too invested in believing.
Like he was looking for proof, even if it wasn't really there.
That's the idea, and she even hinted that the whole thing might have been a hoax.
Wow, so now we've got drama within the UFO community.
Definitely, and it gets even more complicated.
How so?
Well, Peter Robbins, a friend of Hopkins, he defended him.
And criticized Rainey.
Yeah, he basically accused her of trying to damage Hopkins' legacy.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. And Napolitano herself wasn't happy with the documentary either.
So it's clear this case is about more than just the abduction claim.
Right. It's about the whole debate within UFO research.
About belief and evidence and how far people are willing to go.
Exactly. It's really fascinating.
And the Napolitano case, It's got some other weird details too, right?
Yeah, there's the whole thing about those two mysterious guys.
Who supposedly saw the abduction with the UN Secretary General.
That's right. They were apparently harassing Napolitano afterwards.
And Hopkins believed this.
He did, based on some letters he said he received.
It's just bizarre.
It is, and then there's the nasal implant.
The one that showed up on an X-ray but was never found.
Exactly. No one knows what happened to it.
Pablo Virgil, a sociologist who studied the case, he called it very problematic.
Yeah, but he also said it's popular because of all the twists and turns.
It's like a real-life mystery novel.
It is, and Virgil, he also critiques Bud Hopkins' approach.
Like his use of hypnosis.
Yeah, he acknowledges that Hopkins helped a lot of abductees.
But he also says his methods weren't very rigorous.
And he suggests Hopkins might have accidentally planted memories.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
It is, and there's also that 1993 study.
The one that raised questions about the witnesses and the X-ray technician.
Exactly, and it even pointed out similarities between Napolitano's story and a science fiction novel.
Like she might have been influenced by the book.
Possibly. And there were also claims that she was promised money from Hopkins's book.
Wow, this whole case is just full of layers.
It is, and the documentary, it seems to be grappling with this tension.
Between wanting to believe and needing to be critical.
Exactly, which is a big difference from some earlier documentaries.
The ones that just took Napolitano's story at face value.
Right. They presented it as fact.
So what's the takeaway from all of this?
Well, after all this research, it seems like we're still left with that inconclusive label.
We still don't know for sure if alien abductions are real.
We don't, but there's this nagging feeling that something strange is happening.
Like something beyond our current understanding?
Exactly. And the fact that so many people report similar experiences.
Even if there's no physical evidence.
It makes you wonder.
And many of them don't seem to be seeking fame or fortune.
Which makes it harder to dismiss them as fakers.
Right, so maybe they really did experience something.
It's possible, although we can't rule out mass delusion either.
But is it really fair to just say all these people are lying or imagining things?
That's a tough question.
It is, and after this deep dive, it's clear this whole alien abduction phenomenon is super complex.
Full of contradictions and unanswered questions.
We've got the believers and the skeptics.
Each with their own passionate arguments.
We've got the historical context and the societal anxieties.
And we've got the statistical data.
Which is open to interpretation, of course.
Yeah.
But still adds an interesting perspective.
And then we've got cases like Linda Napolitano's.
Which just highlight how messy this whole thing is.
It's a lot to process.
It is, so I'm curious what stands out to you as a listener.
What parts of this resonate with you?
We've covered so much: the personal stories, the scientific arguments, the history, the statistics.
It's a lot to think about.
And it all leads to a bigger question.
The one Professor Gideon raised.
About what these abduction stories tell us about ourselves.
About our fears and our place in the universe.
Maybe it's not just about aliens.
Maybe it's about something deeper.
Something about the human condition itself.
That's something worth pondering.
It is, and maybe it'll spark you to do some more research on your own.
To explore this mystery further.
Because there's definitely more to uncover.
There always is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep looking up.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.